Hello everybody, this is Bitcoin Macro, and on this video guys I'm going to talk about Bitcoin and Bitcoin only because there's so much to cover right now. And of course Bitcoin is the king of the market, it's actually leading the way. Altcoins are dropping versus Bitcoin at the moment. So I'd like to cover my views on the current situation, where it could be heading next. Are we in a bull, are we in a bear market, what's happening right now? But before I get into all of that guys, please remember to like, share and subscribe. Click the bell icon to get more videos like this because I'm pretty sure you're gonna find them informative. And of course in our channel we have a lot more than just technical analysis videos. I'm gonna make more on altcoins, but I'm going to do that later on. I'm going to create more videos because at the moment altcoins are not as hot as Bitcoin or not as important in this phase of the cycle. So let's get straight into it guys. So first of all, Bitcoin has managed to find support on this level so many times between 31k and about 28.5. I found it very surprising that the market hasn't broken down fully yet, and the reason I've chosen the Deribit contract is because on some exchanges like let's say Binance Futures and others, the market didn't really break that low. On some others it did break the low. The first big dump on May 19th was quite anomalous, it wasn't smooth. Some exchanges bottomed around 31k, others around 28k. There wasn't a uniform price. Now on some of them we did have a sweep of that low, of the one on the 19th, but also on the ones on the 26th and the 27th. Now we have seen them tested many times, but the pattern has been quite strange because one of the patterns that I like is, and I've shared this before, is something like this, where the market like has that support, then that low is not just a typical head and shoulders pattern, what I'm showing right here, because it's just one little low that gets a little lower and then higher. I'm just talking about, let's say 1, 2, 3% and then quickly rebound like this one, and then that thing turns back into support, because this isn't exactly a triple bottom, because I personally don't believe in triple bottoms, quadruple bottoms, quintuple bottoms, and that's why I felt that this support was eventually going to break. Now that support might still break, and I do believe it could eventually break, even if that means we're just gonna come around 27k, 24k, but I do believe there is still a pretty decent probability, maybe 50%, maybe 60%, that it's going to happen, and I'm gonna explain why. But until then, Bitcoin has been in a bit of a bullish uptrend at the moment. It's looking fairly strong, and we're just gonna look at all the levels together. So first of all, this level right here in the middle from 36 to 35 has turned into support. That high immediately turned into support, and that's a pretty strong sign that there is more upside to come, because when the middle of the range has finally turned bullish again and the market is showing this kind of strength after a squeeze, because usually after a squeeze you don't really expect the market to keep pushing higher, you expect a flip from shorts to longs, but this isn't what's happening, and we're gonna see more data later on. So currently there is significant resistance all the way up to 47k. Now there is a significant level here as well, and we could potentially have resistance around 60k. However, if we start crossing and closing above 48k, in my opinion the bear market is over, because I do believe, and I'm going to explain why, we've been in a bear market very soon. But the thing is that once we start closing above that old key support, I think the bull might be back, and with vengeance. Like we might see a pretty strong uptrend fairly quickly. So if we get up to 53, I do expect a bit of a rejection in this area, but that's going to be a buy the dip opportunity and then continue higher. So at the moment I do see that's going to be a bit of a fight on the 42k area, because as we go right here, or maybe even here, the only high that hasn't been swept is the one at 42k. So maybe we do get up to 42, 43, 44, and then we dump lower. Now, even if we dump lower, who knows, maybe we do continue higher. This doesn't mean that we're gonna come all the way back to 35, but now 35 is significant support, because we also have the volume profile over here. This area was resistance for quite some time, so I do expect a few bounces in that area. It might be just a few bounces, and then if we start seeing them break lower, maybe we'll get a bounce around 33k, but then we might start thinking that this is gonna go lower. So again, maybe the plan could be, short around 43, 44 and 47, quick scalps potentially, and then if we see the market getting weaker, we might want to short fully. But I would say be careful with shorting. Just short at like levels after a decent move up. Maybe we have another 10% move at about 44k, and then you short over there, and with stops above 48,000. Remember that, guys, because again, with longs, it's quite tricky because we are at resistance. We are getting at the resistance zone at the moment. Although Bitcoin has the strength, it might not be the optimal place to go long. So see this potentially as a neutral zone, because if you want to go long, the places to do it was when Bitcoin was starting to break out or reclaiming those levels. Now I've had a very significant move, and to chase the next 10 to 20% might be a bit of an overkill, because Bitcoin price might start chopping here even more, because we have been in this range. We haven't broken the range for so long. The range could break on either direction, but I do believe at least we are going to have a break of the 42k resistance, because this was just too perfect, guys. That was resistance initially, turned into support short term, then when that broke and got retested, turned back into resistance again. So all in all, these are the key support levels that you can have to take profits or short. And just remember, this is an interesting zone, very interesting zone. And for now, Bitcoin is quite strong. Now, when I'm looking, oops, that's not the right one. Let's have a look at the Bitcoin price with the moving averages. So this one is the 350, then it's the 50, then the 300, and then at 44.5 we have the 200-day moving average. So if the price comes all the way up here, that's definitely a decent short. Why? Because the 200-day moving average has turned fully flat. So when the 200-day moving average turns flat, that's a pretty strong indication that the momentum of the market has definitely slowed down. It's not really a full-on bull market, and especially because we are below the 200-day moving average. We've had that death cross. We also got a death cross between the 300 and the 50-day moving average. So it's just a little bit tricky at the moment because the momentum is not really as strong. However, the Bitcoin price has tested the 300-day and the 350 so many times that, eventually I do believe it might break lower. Historically, anytime we did touch the 300-day or the 350, it has been at the beginning of a bear market. Okay, so you usually get the touches on those moving averages, then Bitcoin price jumps by about 65% and then dumps. So from the bottom over here, if we assume the Bitcoin price jumps about 65%, that's at about 48,000, which is what I was talking about earlier, which is a good combination. So potentially just trap people thinking, oh, we're back above the 200-day moving average, or we're back above this level right here, which has been very important, but it just might be a little deviation and then we just dump lower. However, again, the market is quite strong at the moment. The momentum is with the market because look at this. It reclaimed the 350. It fought a little bit around the 50-day moving average, but then once it started closing above it, exploded. Then once it crossed the 300-day moving average, that was when the big explosion actually happened, because many people might have expected another rejection on it. So the 300 acted as support and as resistance for quite some time, or at least it was holding the price below it or above it for a little bit. The market was chopping around it, and then boom, we had this nice move up. So overall, the momentum is not great. The fact that historically, whenever the Bitcoin price has dumped 50%, it's been on a bear market. Whenever the Bitcoin price has touched the 350-day moving average, it has been on a bear market. Whenever the Bitcoin price has had a death cross after a really big move up, it has been on a bear market. And of course, we actually made the lowest closes we have in quite some time. And we're going to look at this very soon. But before that, let's have a little look at the gaps on CME. So on CME, as you can see here, we did touch this level quite a few times. Yes, we did break that low by just a tiny little bit. We trapped a lot of shorts right here, and then that turned back into support again. However, here is the problem that I have. The problem is that we have these gaps right here. We had this very quick rally with no significant pullbacks, and then we have these gaps over here, and these gaps are coming just right below an area which has been tapped so many times, and everyone is thinking this is gonna hold forever, and it might actually hold. However, I just find it a little hard to believe. So when you combine, or at least I combine, all the technical factors that I see, I just get a little worried that, you know, we might have lower to go. But before we go lower, that doesn't mean we won't go higher. So have a look at this, for example. We had this significant gap over here. That was a resistance zone. We tried to break above, failed to do so. And then when it just came right below, we filled the gap over here, almost fully filled the gap, and then dumped lower. So the next gap that we have, at least to the upside, is this one right here. And the market might actually come all the way up to 49K and then go lower. Why? Here's the reason why I think that. When you have a squeeze like this, usually these squeezes do tend to come back, although it might take quite some time. And usually, you know, you come into the gap, and when you have filled all the gaps on one side, which is the upside on this occasion, that means that the gaps left after that are the gaps lower. So what stops the price from filling this gap and then potentially even filling this gap over here? Okay, so we have an area which has been tested multiple times. All the gaps will be to the downside, and we will test a very, very key significant resistance zone. Maybe you could even think of it from here. You know, the CME chart is a little different from the actual chart because we don't have the weekends trading on here. So as you can see, most of it is just like from this high, from the Elon pump, from the Tesla pump when Tesla announced that they bought Bitcoin, and then it might just come and fill that gap right here. And again, like, I'll just try and find some examples. So if you just look at this right here, guys, we had that big pump. Although it took quite some time, it got filled. Same right here. So this is a short squeeze. It took a really long time to fill, but it did fill. Then another one right here, another major gap, didn't fill initially, then filled. Same thing with this little gap right here and here and here. So most gaps have been filled. There haven't been any significant gaps to the downside or the upside, I should say. And then you see another short squeeze right here, immediately filled. So again, we do have some similar situations in the past as well. Some gaps don't fully fill, but sometimes we do get at least a little pullback afterwards. Hope that makes sense so far. And I'm just going to move straight into the next thing, guys, because Bitcoin right now, it is overbought. It was oversold. It broke that very significant trend line, which you have probably already seen on Twitter or other places from the RSI. That was a big first signal that the market was going to break higher. And look at this, on the Tom DeMark, on the TD9, what happened? We got a 9, and we all also had a 9 before, but that wasn't a perfect 9. But this time we got a 9 because that was a very strong pump. It was an engulfing candle. It did swallow all the previous candles, like 5 candles back. That was massive. And then once the price started moving higher, it started confirming that the trend of the change of the momentum was real. Okay, so in this one, once the RSI started crossing above 50 and it also broke the diagonal, we do have the confirmation of a bull. Now that we don't know how far the bull might go because we are already getting overbought at the moment. So the more overbought we get, I do believe we're gonna find some significant resistance on the levels above us. Maybe we do get a sweep of those highs, 44 up to 47, and then go low, because again, it's also getting on a TD9, 8 straight green candles, which is actually pretty massive in my opinion. You know, when you get such massive bullishness, it just shows that the bulls are completely in control. So you don't want to get in front of a steamroller. But once that gets even higher and more expensive then maybe it might be time to short. However, it has to be done very carefully. You should not just step in straight away. Now I'm just going to mention a few things briefly that I've mentioned in the past. So the market was cheap overall, okay, because the total market cap versus the stable coins, the market cap to stable coins ratio hit some really significant lows. So it was about 10 times the total market cap was 10 times the stablecoin market cap index, especially if we remove stablecoins from the total market cap, which is quite a bit because we have so much money on other exchanges as well. So there has been tons of money sitting on the sidelines waiting to buy. And of course, if there's so much money waiting to buy, there is natural demand. And of course, we have seen yields get lower on yield farming. So more people want to deploy that capital in something riskier to get something out of it. So the more people are in the market, so the more stable coins there are in the market, and the cheaper the market is, the more likely it's going to go up. And currently, the market is still cheaper than it was on March 12th of 2020. Of course, there have been a lot of changes, more use case for stablecoins and so on. However, that still means there is a ton of money in the market that could be deployed for Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies, which of course means that there is a bit of a natural floor. Also, if we look at the stock to flow multiple, it did hit some very, very extremely low levels. And that's part of the reason that I think, Bitcoin was naturally cheap. I don't say that this is a perfect model or that you should follow this model. However, it's just an indication that based on its scarcity, Bitcoin has been pretty cheap, or at least the cheapest it has been based on this model. So the next one has been NVT. So there are different types of NVT signals, but the main one that we're going to see is that, the market got so cheap. It was cheaper than it was on the first capitulation of 2018 and also cheaper than it was on March 12th, or about the same, as cheap as it was back then. Now it's coming back above the NVT. So that probably indicated a massive capitulation, and then we might see the uptrend continue. Also, for example, from the VWAP ratio, that called the top essentially, or at least it started signaling that we were near a top. Now it's back to where it was before the September-October rally of 2020, before we had the big increase. So that's a pretty good indication that, we found some cheap prices. The MRVR, it's also pretty cheap, similar levels over here as well. So the market is not fully cheap, it's not extremely cheap, but it is cheap. And of course, if we look at the Mayer multiple, which is essentially the price divided by the 200-day moving average, that is a pretty cheap ratio. It got very, very cheap, which is very unusual for a bull market. Like, we have never really seen that happen in a bull market. So that's why I'm saying there have been tons of indications that we are in a bear market. However, that doesn't mean that this bear market could just be a mini bear market and then we continue higher, because look, we didn't really go so high for this market to just turn back into a full-blown bear. I never expected, or I never mentioned that this market was going to be like a 2018 bear market. We cannot really compare the two. However, I was expecting something between 18K to 24K to just go around those levels. Doesn't matter how much, maybe even 22K, maybe 24K. I don't know exactly how low the price could go, but I did expect it to pull back a little bit more, at least in the short term, and that didn't really happen. So the next one, we're just gonna move a little bit on the futures and close with this one, because I've already been talking for quite some time. I don't want to bore you guys too much. And the main thing that I want to show you guys is that, yes, we had that period of very, very high funding, and now we've been having a significant period of very low funding. Now, not only has the funding been low, but we have also seen a significant drop on the long-short ratios. So if you have a look at these levels back in July of 2020, you can see the long-short ratios were around 1 or even below 1, which was very bullish because there were more shorts than longs. And usually when you have a very long period of too many longs, which can be seen by the funding plus from the long short ratios, then you do tend to have a collapse. Maybe this collapse was more than enough, and that's why now that we are back at 1-to-1 or a little bit below 1-to-1, this is a good period for longs actually. Now if I just zoom in a little bit, you can see right here that the long short ratios after the squeeze is back below 1, which is very, very surprising, or at least near 1, which is not something that I would have expected, because usually after a short squeeze, like I said before, most people turn bullish and they just go long. And let's just zoom in a little bit. I'm just going to remove the long short ratios so that we can have a clearer picture of the funding. And you can have, guys, some periods of very low funding and the market go down. Okay, low funding doesn't mean more upside. Okay, I think a lot of people have this wrong, and they do believe that because funding is low, the market will go up, but usually that happens in a bull market. You can have low funding, and we did see that in the bear market of 2020, of 2019, and even the one before the crash. So you can have low funding and the market still go down, or you can have funding oscillate between positive and negative. However, typically, you know, because Bitcoin is more bullish than bearish, such high periods of low funding that don't result in a crash, they usually lead into more upside. Now, again, I did expect at least a break below those levels and then go lower, and then go higher, to just trap a few more longs, to just squeeze them a little bit more, but that didn't happen. And of course, that opens the gates for the price to come higher, to come up to these levels. Like you see, the same place that this actually topped, we might get a top of the actual market. And that would be a very interesting thing to see, because if the funding fully turns positive and highly positive, we might see a flip. That's what we have seen up until now, because we have seen the price go up, and then after such a period, and then it flatlines a little bit, and then once it starts coming down, it remains positive. The funding doesn't go down. So you have all those people thinking we have broken out, and then they get trapped. However, of course, we might just get another really long period of high funding, and the market just continue higher. But the more this persists, even if it's just really low positive funding, or like oscillating between positive and negative, the more the price goes up, it's actually bullish. So if the price continues like this and it shows strength, that's a very good sign, because it is indicating strong spot buying. And of course, just to reinforce what I've been saying about low long short ratios, which is surprising because we've had a very long period of long short ratios being above 1, and we actually did have the squeeze with long short ratios between 1.1, or at some exchanges at some point it did hit 0.9, which is kind of odd because the funding rate wasn't extremely negative and the long short ratios weren't extremely negative, like they weren't below 1 either. However, we did get that, and now that it's so low, that's a very positive sign that there aren't too many speculators, which means the price can go higher and higher. Now, I don't know at what point might it reverse. I've explained the levels that I see as potential reversal, but the key thing that remains here is that for now, Bitcoin is in a bullish uptrend. It is showing a lot of strength in the short term, so be careful shorting right now. Doesn't mean you have to go and buy big amounts or anything like it. Just letting you know that we might have a little bit more upside for now. Now, some other stuff that I want to show you guys was the extreme capitulation we had on the options, on the open interest of options, which was another sign that there was a significant capitulation going on. I thought that, you know, we were near a potential bottom. I was expecting it lower, didn't happen, and now we see another healthy growth from here, because again, I do believe that the capitulation from about 12.5 all the way down to $3.2 billion is quite a lot. And then you can also see the capitulation it had from about 28 billion all the way down to about $11 billion just on Bitcoin futures. Of course, on perpetual swaps, which is a lot. And funding rates have been low, and they have been actually going more and more negative slowly. Like from the 7-day moving average, you can see that, for example, on Binance, we have had a period of very low funding and funding rates overall, and that's extremely bullish for Bitcoin, at least for now, for the short term. Now, we also had the capitulation on the network, the daily transactions. As you can see here, way less transactions. We had the capitulation from the hash rate due to the China ban, which kind of played a role along with all the FUD, the ESG FUD and the China FUD, the Elon FUD, the regulations FUD. And right now that we are seeing Bitcoin go up on negative news, that might be quite bullish. Of course, this capitulation right here, like going from about 17.3 billion on-chain volume all the way down to about 5 billion, that's a very big drop. That's bigger than the drop of the actual price, okay? And that's indicating something very special as well, because if Bitcoin bottoms right here, that means that was a very strong bottom. However, to me, that's indicating a weakness at the same time, because yes, we can see from all the activity that we have cleared a lot of excess speculation, but at the same time, we do see that maybe the demand isn't really there either. Now, of course, the demand might come a lot higher, but for now, we do see quite a bit of strength. Finally, we also see the capitulation of GBTC on its volume, massive drop. But look at this right here. The premium actually bottomed before we had the big drop on May 19th. And now look at this, guys. The premium, the discount essentially has gone from about 22% all the way up to 6%. Okay, so right now the premium is at minus 5.7%. That might be indicating more demand, because look, we had the unlocks of GBTC. So GBTC kind of had a little bit of a collapse. Some people didn't really understand what the unlocks actually meant, and they probably got scared a little bit regarding Bitcoin as well. However, now that this is coming back up, it might mean that some people know something. Okay, maybe GBTC is about to turn into an ETF, because we have so many applications that I do also believe an ETF will eventually be approved. Again, these premiums are not really something extremely clear, or they are not showing us something massive. However, when the premium goes from minus 15 about 2 weeks ago all the way up to about 6%, that's quite a big leap, especially after the volume has gone from about 920 million all the way down to 200 million. Maybe the talks between Jack Dorsey and Elon Musk saying that they go Bitcoin on SpaceX and he's not gonna sell and so on, that might be a bullish catalyst as well. Twitter wants to build with Bitcoin on its platform. It wants to become a Bitcoin platform. So we also have a lot of interesting stuff happening. Yes, we do have the FUD from Binance, all the regulations. However, all these regulations are probably going to lead into more institutions getting into the space, because they're going to get more confident that they are not going to have issues later on, which might actually increase the flows and will potentially increase the chances for an ETF into the market. So what is bad for many traders and many people in the space, it will be good for the price. Now, I'm not going to say if that's good or bad. I'm just telling you guys the facts, and I've tried to analyze the situation as best I can. This video, has gotten quite long again. I could have gone with less potentially, but I want to give you guys a very, very good perspective and analysis of where it's Bitcoin right now. So thanks a lot for watching, guys. Please remember to like, share and subscribe. Remember to follow me on Twitter, Telegram and TradingView as well. And I'll see you guys on the next one.